Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Ansel Booker, and as you know, I'm with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We have some very exciting Bear Talk for you today. And what I want to do is go ahead and take this time to thank our alumni speakers for today, and then also to provide you with some background on their biographies, okay? The Alumni Bear Talk for today is anti-racist teaching through children's literature. And this evening, we have with us two Tift College alumna. We have with us Dr. Eliza Braden, is Assistant Professor of Elementary Education in the Instruction and Teacher Education at the University of South Carolina. And she's a member of the National Council of Teachers of English Elementary Section Steering Committee, the chair of the Donald H. Graves Writing Award Committee, the Affirmative Action Committee, and the Early Childhood Education Assembly on Anti-Racist Consultant Network. Her research interests include critical literacy and language practices of Black and Latinx children and their families, anti-racist practices, and critical multicultural children's literature. Eliza's work is published in the Journal of Children's Literature, Teachers College Record, Talking Points, and the Journal of Language and Literacy Education. She is a recipient of several awards, such as the 2017 Early Career Educator of Color Leadership Award from the National Council of Teachers of English, and that was received in 2018. She was also an Early Literacy Educator of the Year Award from the Early Childhood Education Assembly of the National Council of Teachers of English and the College of Education's 2019 Early Career Teaching Award. So if we could all welcome Dr. Braden. Okay, all right, we're gonna introduce now our second host for the afternoon. Dr. Roderiguez is an associate professor of reading education in the Department of Elementary and Early Childhood at Kennesaw State University. She's the co-director for the Academy of Language and Literacy in the Bagwell College of Education at Kennesaw State University. She began her career as a kindergarten teacher and worked as a literacy coach in the elementary school. Her research interests include the early literacy development of culturally and linguistically diverse students, early writing development, literacy development of students who are emergent bilinguals, and Latinx children's literature. She has published in journals such as the Journal of Language and Literacy Education, Race, Ethnicity, and Education, and the Journal of Children's Literature. She is a recipient of the 2018 Early Career Award, and the 2019 Outstanding Teacher Award in the Bagwell College of Education. Let's welcome Dr. Roderiguez. All right, as I have introduced to us our speakers for this evening, I ask that you all participate with our speaker and turn on your cameras for our introductions, and then I will hand it over to them. Thank you all so very much for joining us.
Hi, since we all are a small group, we would love for the opportunity to meet you and hear from you and where you are in the Mercer world. So would everyone be willing to share out your connections to Mercer?
Yeah, I can begin. I apologize. My Wi-Fi just went into like crazy mode. So if this doesn't come through, I apologize. I'm Anne-Marie Kazmarchek. I'm actually an assistant professor at SUNY Cortland in Central New York. I was invited to this meeting from a assistant professor at Mercer, Dr. Ali Herndon, because some of the research she and I have been doing is aligned with this exactly. So I'm really excited that she extended the invitation and to listen to this presentation tonight. So thank you.
Thank you for joining. Tanya? Is it Tanya?
Yes, so I actually studied at Mercer. I was in the PhD program for curriculum and instruction, and so that's why I received my degree, and I do some adjunct work at Mercer. And so I received this email, and I decided I would like to participate. I've done some work in the past with culturally responsive teaching and that sort of thing, and I currently serve in Houston County as our science coordinator for all of our elementary schools. So just trying to see what I can learn today.
Okay, good.
My name is Rob Helfenbein, and I don't know our speakers, but I'm proud as the new Associate Dean for Research in the Tisch College of Education here at Mercer. I just started on July 1st, but it's exciting to see some alumni.
Great. I think Emma is next.
Hi, my name's Emma. I'm a senior at Mercer right now, and I am an intern in Dr. Booker's office, so I try my best to come to all the Bear Talks. They're really interesting. I've really enjoyed the series, so I'm here regardless of the topic. I always enjoy them.
Well, thank you, Emma.
Hi, I'm Florence. I'm a librarian at the Swilly Library, and I am driving right now. I'm driving home.
Okay. Be safe.
Okay.
Drive safely. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us in a conversation around anti-racist teaching through children's literature. The topic is so broad, but Sanjuana and I work together specifically in children's literature. That's both parts of our research agenda. And so we want to share that work with our friends at Mercer. We would like to say that we have plenty of Mercer stories. And we're kind of sad that we're unable to attend homecoming this year, because this would have been the I guess the 20th year from which I started in 2000. But we graduated in 2005. So thank you all for the invitation to come and share a bit of our work and what we do with you all in the Spirit Talk. And so thank you, Dr. Booker, and everyone for coming.
And so we'll go ahead and get started. And Dr. Booker asked us to share a little bit about our Mercer story.
I love these photos.
So this is our graduation picture from Mercer. We graduated in 2005, and we both graduated from the College of Education with a degree in elementary education. And so we actually met, Eliza and I met during our sophomore year at Mercer. And we got to know each other through our mutual friend in the middle, Shoni, who we are still very close to and is also a teacher. And so we met in classes, and we just became friends. So I think our junior year, we actually moved off campus and got apartments like next door to each other in a kind of shady side of town, if I may say. But we graduated from Mercer in 2005, and Eliza and I were a part of, we learned about a program called the McNair program while we were at Mercer. And Eliza, remind me where we learned about that. It was at a dinner put on by...
I think, Dr. Booker, you all have changed the name. Is it the Mercer, was it the minority?
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. So the new name for it is the Minority Mentor Program.
Yes.
But when you all might have been here, it might have been the McNair Scholars Program. Was that correct?
Yeah, well, it was the Minority Mentor Program, which allowed different professionals to come in, and you would speak to them and learn about their histories and their work. And so there was a portion of the program where you learned about different summer research opportunities. And so Sanjuana and I, we learned about the Ronald McNair program. And so we decided to apply in our junior year for the Ronald McNair program, and we were offered a space, and we went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville for a summer and worked with different mentors in regards to research, and that kind of sparked our interest in getting a doctorate from there. So we thank Mercer all the time for kind of propelling us to get into this.
And the purpose of the Ronald McNair program is to get more minority students into PhD programs and into faculty positions. And so I think, so we went through that program for, in the summer, we completed the internship. And then that program also led both of us
to complete our master's programs at the University of Tennessee. Because of that program, they were able to also offer us fellowships to get our master's there. And then we went to teach. We were both teachers in the same school district in Dalton, Georgia. Eliza moved to Dalton, and we taught at the same school. and so then we knew from our experience with doing research through the McNair program that we both wanted to get a PhD. And so we began, we both got accepted to several institutions, but we wanted to continue teaching. And so we both started in the same PhD program at Georgia State University. And we would teach during the day and drive to Atlanta for an hour and a half, 2 or 3 times a week when we got our PhD programs. And so that's our Mercer story. And so now we're faculty and we're conducting research, and we're very fortunate that we get to engage in research that we are very passionate about. And so children's literature, and specifically diverse children's literature, happens to be an area of interest for both of us. And so we've been able to continue our research in that area, even though we're at different institutions. So we're going to share a little bit about what we have learned and continue to learn about in this field. Eliza and I have conducted several studies related to children's literature. We use critical content analysis to analyze texts. We have focused on immigration texts. More recently, we conducted a study focused on children's literature related to the Black Lives Matter movement. And so we are not sharing any of that specific work, but more in general today. Mm-hmm. So we'll go ahead and get started. We all have questions at the end if you have any questions. But of course, if there's anything as we go, if you want to type it in the chat box or unmute your mic, you can do that.
And we can also share any of our publications as well. And Dr. Booker, if you want to send those out too as well. Okay. So we want to start, when we think about why we do what we do, we always start with our positionality, why we engage in this work. And we wanted to start with the civil rights activist, John Lewis, and let him tell you why.
My philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, say something, do something, get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble.
He was always different than every member of Congress. Everybody knew what he had done. He was John Lewis.
We're marching today to dramatize to the world the hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens denied the right to vote.
Congressman Lewis gave us the blueprint to organize and to legislate.
The reason why he's effective as a leader.
So we're not going to play the whole video, but when we think about the reasons why we engage in this work, we consider ourselves also scholar activists, that we also have a right and responsibility to do this work and get in good trouble, no matter the pushback or the ways in which it is taken, because we're doing it for the sake of children, specifically the children that we work with, Black, Latinx, and Indigenous children. And so we wanted to start with a video from John Lewis. So today we're going to talk about our commitments to anti-racism, anti-Black racism, and also anti-Latinx racism, and talk about the difference between being a racist or an anti-racist and where our commitments are. And we always begin with this brief video to talk about why it's important to situate your work within that thinking. I'm gonna play this video for us.
So I have a question for you. Are you non or are you anti? Several months ago, in response to Ferguson, Baltimore, the killings of Freddie Gray and Tamir Rice, my friend Caitlin put up a Facebook post breaking down the difference between non-racism and anti-racism. Most of us are non-racist. Because racism is looked upon as some moral lapse, we feel quite self-assured by simply not being racist. I'm not a bigot. I don't sing that N-word when my favorite rap jam comes on. I didn't vote for that guy. I'm not burning any crosses. I'm not a skinhead. I don't, I won't, I'm not, I've never, I can't. What you end up with is an entire moral stance, an entire code for living your life and dealing with all the injustice in the world by not doing a damn thing. That's the great thing about none. You can pull it off by simply rolling over in your bed and going to sleep. So why are you sitting at home and watching things unfold on TV instead of doing something about it? Because you're a non-racist, not an anti-racist. Now do this for me. Take the C out of racist, replace it with a P. I'm not a rapist. I'm not friends with any rapist. I didn't buy that rapist last album. All these things that you're not doing. Meanwhile, people are still getting raped and black boys are being killed. It's not enough that you don't do these things. You're going to bed with a clear conscience is not going to stop college students from getting assaulted. You thinking climate change is terrible is not going to stop climate change. You being so assured that you're not anti-black, anti-Muslim won't stop the next hate crime. And it's wonderful that you recognize how brave gay people are when facing persecution, but they aren't the ones who need to be brave. We need to get active. We need to hold people accountable. We need to accept that what hurts one of us hurts all of us. And we need to stop thinking that injustice going on in the world isn't to an extent our fault. We need to stop being none and start being anti.
Racism is a business. For centuries, it is.
So I want to talk a little bit about anti-Blackness and thinking about what he just shared and our roles in not just being non, but being anti and what it means to be anti. Because with anti, it comes as situating ourselves within being reflective and engaging in that introspection of self, but it also means that we have to engage in action. And what does action look like? In K-12 settings? What does action look like in an elementary setting? So we're going to start with anti-Blackness. So DeMoss and Ross define anti-Blackness as a particular disdain for Black people as reflected in the laws, policies, and institutions. Anti-Blackness is a social construction that does not merely focus on race and racism, but rather than its antagonism in which Blackness is despised. It is a despised thing in itself. And Black people experience the weight of being hated, detested, and despised by white society. And we've seen that in the degradation of Black individuals, but also the continuous murders of Black men and Black women.
I'm going to continue to talk a little bit about this term Latinx or Latinx. This is actually a term that's not as widely used as the anti-Blackness term, but it is real. It's racism related to Latinos or Latinx communities in the U.S. I do use the word Latinos because that is what is used in the literature. And so what the literature tells us is that a lot of the aspects of racism or anti-Latino racism is attributed to legal status and attributing an undocumented status or immigration status to Latinx groups. And this is also because this racism, it also occurs because Latinos or Latinx, the Latinx community doesn't always fit within the racial framework that has been constructed in the US. So this group is often viewed as a monolithic group when in fact it's a very diverse group in the US. And also the view of Latinx communities is also driven by negative culturally threatening stereotypes such as being gang members, for example, or again, being violent rapists or murderers. So those are all stereotypes that contribute to this anti-Latinx racism. And so we want to think about what does it mean to be anti-racist, because this is a term that's being widely used, and we're learning more and more about it. And although it's more nuanced than this, we wanted to just provide an overview of it. What does that mean? And it means acknowledging that racist structures exist in all areas of our life. And so for us, thinking about even schooling in the curriculum, right? So, and then self-reflection and understanding that your own lived experiences carry different powers and privileges, and how power and privileges benefit some groups and excludes others. So understanding that, and then working to dismantle those systems of racism in different spaces. And so those are the big ideas and what it means to be anti-racist. And we rely on Dr. Kendi's work and his work on how to be an anti-racist. And we just wanted to share this quote. There is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The claim of not racist neutrality is a mask for racism. And an anti-racist is someone who is supporting an anti-racist policy by their actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. So again, really thinking about the neutrality of just people that say, oh, I'm not racist, but really thinking about what does it mean to be anti-racist and not just not racist.
So we're going to talk about this this work in relation to young children. What we often hear is I work with pre-service and in-service teachers. Well, children are too young, or are we exposing them to something or pushing something on them? But what we do know is that early on developmentally, children are aware of race. Even at the age of 1, children at age one, as young as 2 years, use race to reason about people's behaviors. By 30 months, most children use race to choose playmates. And even by, say, 6 years or 6+ years, explicit conversations with 5 to 7-year-olds about interracial friendships can dramatically improve their racial attitudes in as little as a single week. So this work has been widely studied. This is nothing new. I'm not sure if you all heard of the Mamie and Kenneth Clark's doll study. Have you ever seen that before? Where they look specifically in the ways in which children can they choose the best doll, the prettiest doll, the doll that they love and like the most. And these were very young children. And this work was done in the 1950s, and it's been replicated several times, the most recently within the past few years. And we are still not seeing a shift. So children are aware of race, and then they are even aware of racism at a very early age. Our jobs as practitioners, teacher educators, or researchers is to continue to examine the way children's attitudes about race, but also commit to anti-racist practices as well. So why do we want to do that? We know, for example, that Black students are punished more harshly and more frequently than white students for the same offenses. There's racial inequities in school discipline, and then that also leads to the school to prison pipeline. We know that children of color are over-referred for special education, but under-referred for gifted and talented classes. And we, even in our own experiences as classroom teachers during that time, we noticed how in a primarily Latino population of students, where we had 90% of our school was 90% Latino, there were primarily white students in the gifted and talented program. Okay, so we have to be mindful in ways that racism and race position students, a lot of students of color, in discursive situations. Mm-hmm.
And I'll step in and say something, Dr. Braden. In the state of Georgia, students who are could you go back to the other slide? The governor's office actually puts out data for school disciplines for all school districts in the state of Georgia. So they have a dashboard, and you can go in and look at different school districts. And I'm not going to say everyone because I haven't looked at every one of them, but I've looked at the major school districts in the state of Georgia. And by just opening the dashboard and looking at the graphics that come up, you can see how evident it is what the racial discrepancies in the number of students who are suspended from schools are. I mean, overwhelmingly, you will see that suspensions in schools are much higher for students who are Black than students who are white in the state of Georgia. And that's widely available data that anyone can go in and look at through the governor's office. That's data that's put out there. So we can see this racial inequity even in schools. And I will say that I have even worked and advocated for parents whose own children have been suspended from preschool, from pre-K, and kindergarten. And so this doesn't only occur in high schools. This begins in kindergarten and elementary schools.
This also extends to the curriculum in which Black, Latino, and Indigenous students and students of color do not see themselves in the curriculum. So we have to think about how anti-racism or anti-racist teaching also pushes us to think beyond just single stories and single narratives, as Chimamanda Adichie says, but also moving beyond the month mentality. So this is Hispanic Heritage Month. It is okay in October 16th to talk about Dolores Huerta. It is okay on March 1st to talk about Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer. Okay, so pushing the narratives beyond that single month and making sure that our curriculum does not privilege only Eurocentric history and European history. So some of these statements might sound familiar to you in teacher education. They just can't learn. Why do they live here if they don't speak English? Do you think they came here legally? You have to yell or they don't listen. It's what they hear at home. And another is, did you hear that crazy name? So all of this is a form of racism. This is racism. Okay. So one of our roles is to help teachers really recognize it, to see it, and to understand when we hear it. I do not personally think that anyone that goes into education, with all that you have to do and deal with in education, they intentionally really say, I'm going to be racist. I don't think people come out and say, I'm going to be racist. But it is so ingrained, white supremacy, whiteness is so ingrained within our system, our US history from the very start, that we have to really think deeply about how we talk about students of color and then our diversity, not even just, and I want to move beyond also Black students or Latino students, but also our students with disabilities, our students, LGBTQIA students who identify as non-binary. We have to think more deeply about how discrimination, prejudices, and also racism shows up in these education spaces. So what does anti-racist teaching? So if we know what it might sound like and what it might look like, what does it mean to engage in anti-racist teaching? So one, it means to provide affirmations in image and include voices of and experiences of Black and Latinx communities throughout the year. moving beyond that single month. It means providing ongoing and comprehensive instruction, accurate historical accounts, and engage students in critical dialogue. It means honoring the home languages of children. Some students speak AAL, some students speak Gullah Geechee, some students speak standard and mainstream English, some students speak Spanish, but they're all on the same level field, the same level, okay? And we have to help teachers and help people and society understand that. And also making structural changes in school policies. That is where you really see great transformation and shifts, is the structural changes in school policies, such as management standards and also assessments. And so this comes from Derman Sparks and their work, and they say, without teaching that counters anti-Blackness, anti-Latinx, anti, all students, no matter the demographic, learn inaccurate, incomplete, and distorted information about people of color. And they absorb messages about white superiority, whiteness as the norm, and negative messages about people of color. And if you're interested to learning about individuals who engage in whiteness, I would definitely look at the work of Aaron Miller and Brian Kissel. They really go in depth around whiteness. And you also know, you might have heard of Robin DiAngelo as well. But Aaron Miller's work is where she really studies the messages that children absorb, and how that can also distort images of others. So what is the role of children's literature? And Sanjuana's going to talk about that.
Thank you, Dr. Braden. Okay, so what is the role of children's literature? So we use the concept of windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors to think about children's literature. And this concept was developed by Rudine Sims Bishop, and really thinking about how children learn about themselves by seeing their lives, their experiences reflected in books. So that's the mirrors part. And then they learn about others, other cultural groups also through reading about them. That's the windows part. And the sliding glass door is that they can actually almost walk through a door into someone else's experience through reading about them. And so that is the framework that we adopt, or that we like to use when we think about the role of children's literature, and why we think it's so important for children not only to see themselves represented in the literature in their classrooms, but also to have a wide variety of books that represent experiences of others, because that is how they're going to learn about other cultural groups, other family structures, other languages. And so we see children's literature as a powerful tool that can be used by teachers and parents to help children to learn about others. So I want to share with you, or we want to share with you a little bit about, can you go to the next slide, Dr. Braden? Sorry. About statistics in children's literature. So the Cooperative for Children's Book Center is out of the University of Wisconsin, actually collects data for children's literature that's published in the US. So if you look at this graphic, this is actually the 2018 graphic, and it, you're fine. And it shows the percentages of books that were published with the depicting the characters from the different backgrounds. So if you look, you can see in this picture, you can see the concept of windows and mirrors being represented. So if you look at the graphic, you see windows and mirrors. But you can see there are over 3,000 books that this center receives and catalogs each year, and from different publishers across the US. And you can see that 50% of the books that they've cataloged are white. And then you see animals, African American, Asian, Pacific Islander, Latinx, and American Indian. And so I'm just going to let you think about what do you notice about the graphic when you look at the diverse groups, and then anything else, anything that anyone notices that you would like to share? Anne Marie shared animals before our diverse students. So if you look at the number of not the number, but the percentage of books published with animal characters, that's 27% of books, of children's books have animal characters. And then you look at 10% African American, 7% Asian Pacific, 5% Latinx, 1% American Indian, First Nations. So there's more books published with animal characters than with diverse characters. And so let that sink in, right? As a child, you're in a classroom, you are not seeing your experiences represented in the books that you read. And how does that feel as a child? You may start to think, hey, maybe my experiences don't deserve to be written about, right? So maybe my home life is not something people write about. So it's just, I think it's really important to consider this. And in our work with teachers, we always help them, or we try to help them think about how important it is to have representation from different groups in your classroom library and in your classroom. And for parents, we want to encourage you to think about bringing books that represent your own experiences as well as those of others. So we can continue. So we wanted to share some books with you that we have used or considered to be books that can be used for anti-racist teaching in the classroom, or can be used with families. So the first book is Brown Boy. This is something that, this book depicts something that we are hearing more about. We just read, I think last week, Eliza sent me an article in the New York Times talking about the talk that Black families have to have with their young African American boys about police brutality. And so that is what that book is about a mother whose child is going off to school, and they're having a conversation about racism. Then you have We Rise, We Resist, We Raise Our Voices. And that book is really answering the question about what do we do in divisive times like this? What can children do? And it's different authors that address this question. And then I Am Alfonso Jones. This is a graphic novel for older readers, maybe third grade and up. And it shares the life of Alfonso as he is shot by police, and he actually gets to come back and is able to witness his grieving family and how they try to get justice for his death. So those are three texts that we use, or we suggest teachers use with students. Go ahead, Dr. Braden.
Well, no,
we get excited when we talk about children's books.
Yeah. So in thinking about violence, different forms of violences that are trauma that children experience, we think about degradation of the ways of the way of being, knowing, and experiencing the world, but also the ways in which they look. So one way to counter that is by using literature such as Crown by Derek Barnes, An Ode to a Fresh Cut. And in here, Derek really showcases how a young boy feels when he goes to the barber, how he feels fresh and he feels cool. And then there's I Love My Hair by Natasha Anastasia Tarpley, where a girl kind of, she tells the story about the experience of her mother fixing her hair, and the feeling of sitting in between her legs, and the whole experience. And then also Hair by Kate Petty, which is an international children's book, talks about how other children wear their hair in other parts of the world. So these are this set of texts, and there are others, of course, there are many others, but these are representations of the ways we can counter the trauma in regards to the way children look and also experience the world in schools. Another set of texts we have here, Never Forgotten by Patricia McKissick, African Princess and African Beginning, is one way to counter anti-racism, but also counter the work that the story of African Americans begins with enslavement, is by revealing the histories before enslavement. And so we never talk about the Brilliants, the Doggo tribe. We never talk about the Naya Plata. We never talk about the ways in which they use astronomy. So it's important that children learn about that through children's literature. And these are just some texts in which children can learn about African people before they were enslaved in the US. And here we wanted to end with some questions that we sometimes use, and we vary these questions depending on when we're working with different grade levels as well. So we might construct these in different ways. So we use them for research wise, but we also use these same questions when we're working with teachers, and we have them look at different set of texts and looking at the representation of people and people of color within literature. And also when we're working with side by side with young children as well, we use some of these prompts and questions to have them consider people's culture, and also cultures that are not of their own. Okay, and then we wanted to leave you all with some additional resources that you can look into. We love the work of Akia Gross with Woke Kindergarten. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the work that she's been putting together, really highlighting the histories and the realities of Black children with the books that she literally creates with them in mind. And so you can find her on IG. Then there are web resources such as Teaching Tolerance and Zen Education. We use that a lot. So in regards to like Indigenous Peoples Day, I might have my students go to Zen Education and learn about different Indigenous people and tribes, and learn about history that goes tokenized, omitted, or untold within a curriculum. Then there's The Conscious Kid that provides a number of books and book suggestions. And then I like Read Like a Rock Star. She's on IG. She's a mom that talks specifically about anti-racism with her interracial family. So she's on IG too. So you might want to look at some of these resources. You can take a picture of this slide if you like. And here are some final thoughts.
This is a quote that I think sums up anti-racist work in schools perfectly. And I'll read it out loud. And then we'll just have some final thoughts. Anti-racist work in all schools is essential. It is the exercise of hope, the practice of undoing and dismantling systems of oppression, the practice of freedom and of truth-telling. Anti-racist work is the practice of healing and restoring. It is the practice of love. And both Eliza and I, when we think about this work, we both do it because we do love kids. We love the kids that we've worked with. Both Eliza and I worked mostly in predominantly Latinx schools with Latinx students, high populations of Latinx students, 90%, 95%. But now we get to work with pre-service teachers, and we get to help them think about how they can work with all students. And one of the things Eliza mentioned is that this is really important work for all kids. And if we are, we just believe in this practice, and that it's a practice of love, and really thinking about even things like critical care, having high expectations of all students, teaching them about these unheard voices in history, examining curriculum, bringing in different books. It's really a practice of love. And so we wanted to end it there, and help you to think about why we see this work as being really crucial in schools. And also, if you're a parent and really thinking about starting these practices at home. So I think now we're going to have time. This is the end of our presentation. So we're going to have time for questions if anyone has any questions.